Okay, so we are talking today about spiritual significance of relationship, which is the guide lecture 180. And we went through our agenda and just did our attunement. So I will begin the teaching part. So there are a number of themes in this lecture, and they follow together really nicely. But one of them is why relationship? Why is relationship spiritual? And what's the connection there? We never really think about relationship necessarily as a spiritual thing. And so the guide talks about that. And then we have all experienced that even though we like to be in relationship, often we have difficulties. And so the next big piece is why are those barriers there? What are the barriers and why they're there? And the guide talks about something called the split in this lecture. So we'll talk a little bit about what that split means and its implications. And then, of course, how we can work on that split. And what is it that we need to do to be able to make our relationships a little bit more move a little bit more easily through them, with our partners, with our coworkers, our bosses. What is it that we can do to actually, guide says, do something with that poison, lessen the poison that's present in relationships. And then the other piece is, what if you're doing the work and the person that you are relating to is not? So there's sort of an uneven development here, and we need to be in relationship with people. Sometimes we really need to be in relationship with people who have no interest in this work. And why is that important? And what kind of benefits can happen for all of us, for us and for them and for the relationship, even if they do not actively participate in doing this kind of work. So we'll start with the first piece of this. What's spiritual about relationship? So we know that we grow physically without even thinking about it, from little babies into old people. And we also grow intellectually by learning, by our brain developing, our brain growing, by doing schoolwork, by reading newspapers and talking to people, and all of the ways that we grow intellectually. But I bet not one of you can tell me one way that we grow naturally emotionally, right? It doesn't happen. And yet we know that there's a big emotional component in our lives, but there's really no way that we can grow emotionally. And the guide says that we can grow emotionally only by doing the work to understand our entire self, our whole self, and that we really don't know most of ourselves. We are unaware of what lives within us. And so that emotional self, maturing that emotional self, really is an inner journey. And that's why it's spiritual. So it's a very, very close relationship. And he says, the only way, that's why relationship is so important to us, because this idea of relationship has been given to us as a tool to grow emotionally. And yet so few people take advantage of that. And it's really, really important that we do that. So that's why relationship is a spiritual thing. And the more that we can identify with that, that's sort of an easy way to say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm having these problems, but relationship is my opportunity. It's the only opportunity really for emotional growth and that self-search. So the guy describes that there is a realm of consciousness, and it actually doesn't even need to be. He talks about a realm of unitive consciousness, but there is a realm of distorted consciousness too. But it's just a realm of consciousness, and he encourages us to look at ourselves as just units of that consciousness. We're just tiny pieces. And, we all come into our adulthood with a unique set of experiences. And all of those experiences exist in the universal consciousness. And we have only had some very small part of those experiences. And so we can think about ourself in relationship to another as being, I just used triangles here, as having some overlap in our experiences and a significant amount of experiences where we don't overlap. And you can think of those triangles as moving around that bigger triangle, and the experiences get bigger as we get older and we have more experiences, and we meet people with whom we might have a significant degree of overlap, and people with whom we have no overlap at all, or at least we think we don't. But all of those experiences are just part of this universal consciousness, but everyone within it is unique. So I put this slide together to look at some of these concepts in a little bit of a graphic way. So we're looking at this sort of the piece of the previous slide, just with two people, self and other. And I put a few things on here, one being the split. And so we have a split between ourself and the other. We also have a split between our conscious and unconscious selves. So our conscious self is the outer appearance, what we show to the world, and who we think we are. And on the right, that includes our personality types, our appearance, our interests, our likes and our dislikes, everything that we think makes us who we are. And then in the unconscious is what the guide calls our hidden inner self. And no, in Pathwork, we've always talked about the inner self and the child self and the child consciousness. And today we're going to talk about the pieces of us in a slightly different perspective. And that is the unconscious, again, on the right part of the screen, the lower right, the parts of ourselves that we refuse to see, or who we think we aren't. I'm not mean. I'm not pretty. I'm not a jerk. It might be anything. I'm not a good mother. I'm not a good wife. I'm a great wife. I'm a good father. All of these things, we think either we are or not. We have a tendency very much to split that, to see that duality. And we don't really think about how we can be these things that we don't like to see in ourselves. So again, the yellow piece of this diagram, this is the region of harmony, and this is where our shared experiences draw us together. And again, these could be that we with the other, if we can find, sometimes when you're in a party or a room full of people and you don't know someone, and all of a sudden a song comes on and you smile and the person next to you smiles, all of a sudden you have a bond. So you have a harmony of experiences. These experiences draw us together. So every time we find a harmony with someone, no matter what, it could be the woman standing next to you in the grocery store line, and you figure out you have the same items in your shopping cart, something really little, but recognize when those things happen, how it draws us together, and how if we even look at our country today, how there seems to be this idea that there's two different groups of people and they see the world completely differently, and there's very little overlap. And that's when we have fights or wars or we split up. So it's really important to recognize and appreciate these experiences that draw us together. But the orange region is that region of disharmony. And we know that most of these our emotional selves, our child consciousness piece, all of the places where we have distortions and misconceptions, to use the Pathwork terminology, result from our experiences during childhood that left negative impressions on us. So it may be that we were not allowed to be messy, or we weren't allowed to show fear, or we weren't allowed to show anger or any sort of weakness. And so we have these buried inside of us that we are not supposed to be certain things. It is really bad. It's not a good thing to be any of those things. So when someone in our relationship that we're in relationship with demonstrates those tendencies, we are triggered. We have an emotional trigger because we're not supposed to be that, and nobody else is supposed to be that either. And that will create the disharmony because we don't see those places in ourselves. We're supposed to be pretty and made up, or we're supposed to be strong and resilient. And so when we see people who aren't that, we don't like it. Because it was not accepted in us. These pieces were not accepted in us as children. And so the guide says that the unseen pieces are the only catalyst that actually facilitates our emotional and therefore our spiritual growth. And the more that we ignore these pieces, the wider the split becomes. Are there any questions about this particular slide? Oh, okay, well, I'll go on. So this is the split. So the conscious piece is all about how we feel, what we think, how we act, and how we express our personality, whether it be will or love or reason. We will express that. And this is the conscious part. But the unconscious part is all of our experiences where we have distortions. So anything that causes us to blame another for what is happening in our life, blame another for any issue that makes us uncomfortable and causes an emotional reaction, is where we need to work and how we work with the split. So inner difficulties, outer difficulties, it's so easy to blame another. And then we also use those things to withdraw from relationship, to actually just say, oh, this is not worth my time. I can't work with this. This person is not somebody who I have any shared experience with, who I have any commonality in humanity with. And by doing so, we deny any self-responsibility. And that's what happens when we don't face the hidden side. We just consciously make the decision. We widen that split and we make it more and more difficult for ourselves to actually have any sort of sense of satisfaction in a relationship. And of course, if we face the hidden side, then we are going to experience more pleasure in our relationships. We're going to feel less need to blame and less need to withdraw. So what kinds of goals should we look for? What is it that we're trying to achieve here? And again, in most of Pathwork and most of the lectures, we're looking at a question of duality versus unity. And so if we choose to not face the hidden parts of ourselves, we will widen the split, and we either do not have a satisfying relationship with the other, or we decide we're going to go into isolation. And so if we want to move, so that again, the purpose here is to move off the duality and to move closer to one another. We often wonder why we end up choosing partners who seem to be the exact opposite of us. Obviously, there's something that has drawn us together, that, beyond attraction. There must be some shared experiences that we can bond over and feel close to someone with. And yet we often tend um, to find pieces of that person that we just can't stand, and it makes us crazy. And how do we find the balance? So when we have a relationship, so many times when one starts a relationship with another, there's this sense of, oh, we've always got to be together. I just really want to be with that person. But that again is sort of one side of this duality. You've always got to be there for me. I've always got to be there for you. So spending time together and spending time alone are two ways that we can find a little bit of balance, giving someone else space, getting space from them, and to actually recognize when you're being willful or when you just want to, I use the phrase give in, but not give in a way that has an attitude, but just say, hey, you know what, I'll just go along with this right now. Let's see how it goes, kind of giving in. To be willing to admit that you're wrong sometimes, to not always feel the need to be right. And to also, depending on your character, maybe you're a follower, to step up and say, you know what, I'll take responsibility for doing this, leading this, having this part. And also, if you're a leader, to be willing to take a back seat sometime. And so if we can do these things in relationship, and these are just part of life as opposed to doing the work, this is just the give and take of relationship, we will find that we can move more close to one another, and actually eliminate some of that poison of friction that the guide discusses. And if we don't do this, we probably have all had the experience where we would find another relationship. Hey, let's meet another person. And we also find, gee, I'm repeating the same pattern again. It's happening again. I just chose another person who has all these things. So many of them are saying the same things that I didn't like in the other person. And then our spiritual and emotional growth is completely stunted. We continue to widen that split because we haven't faced ourselves, and we haven't learned that the purpose of meeting someone and getting together is to actually do that emotional growth. And then lastly, we suffer the pain of isolation. And there are times when we all say, oh, I just finished that. I'm not going to have a relationship. I'm just going to be on my own. And that works for a while. But after a while, we definitely get out there and look, because that's what we're here for. We are here to relate. We're here to relate, to learn how to relate with the other, and to then grow our emotional maturity and fulfill the spiritual need of being human. So I just wanted to give you an example. Uh, Actually, two examples. I don't know if that's, yeah, this is it. So these are really, I mean, these just helps. Okay, so we know these, so I'm going to give you an easy example and then one that was a little bit harder. One that we probably all had and had multiple times is when, say, we're stuck in traffic, somebody cuts us off, and we've had a bad day, and it's annoying, and we've been sitting there, and we need to get where we're going, and we end up with road rage because somebody cut us off. And recognizing in ourselves, so this is this hidden piece. We come back to this hidden piece. In this example, it's really obvious. When have you ever cut somebody off? And I'm pretty sure that all of us in all of our driving history have done that and probably done it numerous times. Sometimes we intended to do it, and other times we were just so busy thinking about something else that we just did it and didn't even know we did it. So if when that happens, we can actually be, and you're sitting in your car, remembering, I did that. I know, and I did that. Oh God. And I felt so bad that time. Maybe another time, oh, I didn't even know I did it. And then all of a sudden the person honked at me. And and then I did it another time because I just had to get home because it was really important. And we start understanding that we've done this thing and we have experienced, and we've done it thinkingly, knowingly, but also unthinkingly, unknowingly. And it's part of who we are. And when we do that, at least I know that when I do that, when I can sit and actually sit with that, that my road rage definitely lessens, sometimes goes away completely, but there's an opening that occurs. There's an opening and a softening, which, again, going back to those little triangle drawings, expands that realm of shared experiences. And that's what we're trying to do. We're expanding the realm of shared experiences. That was a simple example. Now, there's another one that I'd like to share, and this one is personal, but I find that it really exemplifies working on a difficult issue with a partner. And now I'm a will type. I'm type A. I go, 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 go until I drop. I'm always busy doing something. And I have chosen in succession two husbands who are type Bs, who, sit down middle of the day. First husband might smoke a joint. Second husband might do a meditation or, God forbid, turn on the television set or just decide to sit around. Well, I'm noticing that there is so much to be done around the house and so many things they could be doing. Do. And they're just being. And I struggled with this for a long time with my helper, because I would talk about, he's so lazy. He's just so lazy. He never does X or Y or Z. He's so lazy. And it drives me batty. And she said to me, how are you lazy? When are you lazy? I said, I'm not lazy. I am never lazy. I am not lazy. And I sat with that for a long time. I expressed it, I emoted it in many ways, stomping my feet, screaming, I am not lazy. I'm not. I'm never lazy. That is not in me to be lazy. And I really fought it and fought it. And one day, as I was doing this fighting in the middle of a helper session, it occurred to me, as again, I got guidance. You are lazy when you're alone. And it was one of the biggest epiphanies that I have had doing Pathwork. And I realized just how true that was. when I'm alone in my home, I do all those things. I will sit around, read a book, ignore the dishes, ignore all of the to-dos, and I can actually relate that back to my childhood when it was not okay. I was never alone as a child, lived in a very small place, and it was not okay to be lazy. So now when I'm alone, I'm lazy. And again, once I found that peace in me, it was this opening, it was this softening. And I can honestly say, I don't have that problem anymore. Um, I can appreciate it. But it brings up another point, and that takes us to our next slide. Because my husband, even though I've introduced him to Pathwork, has not found that it grabs him the way it grabs me. And so the next topic that the guide brings up is, what if you're in a partnership, work relationship, friendship, where there's uneven spiritual and emotional development. And I intentionally wrote this slide out just with words because it's such an important part that just that really is evidence about what's going on with the other, how does that relate to you, and what possible outcomes can that occur. So the guide says really that it's very important here that we recognize that we're not responsible ever for how the other person is, and if they develop, how much they develop. We cannot be responsible for that. The only thing we can be responsible for is ourselves. But often we find ourselves in a relationship where we can't really, where that person is just not interested in developing their emotional skills. But it is our responsibility. Your guide says it's your responsibility to do your work. It's important that you do your work, not theirs. And there may be many reasons that they're incapable. It might be because their childhood emotional traumas are just so intense that they fear them. And we know that from when we began Pathwork, we see that we're really afraid of things, but we're afraid of the fear, really, because once we start doing it, we realize that it's really not that hard. It's just the fear of beginning that is so difficult. But they may be in an entirely different place in their soul's journey. So that may be the point. So what happens if we're in that relationship and we just have to deal with it? There are a number of different outcomes. And one of which is what I just mentioned, this thing with my husband. And I'm going back again to this example because I think it really is just such a powerful indication of how important the work is and how it really can change things, whether the other person is actively participating or not. Because when I started, if I noticed, say he sat down to do a crossword puzzle, instead of continuing to do things around the house, I would sit down with him. I've also sat down with him to do meditations, or just to go sit on the back porch and listen to the birds sing. And that's actually doing something for me because it's allowing me to be lazy in relationship with him, or not even to be lazy because lazy has a negative connotation, but to actually be in being, which is so hard for me to do. And so I have softened to that. And of course, initially he was really surprised. I sat down. It's like, yeah, can I do that meditation with you? Or can I do that crossword puzzle with you? And he's surprised and he's happy. It's like, wow, she just came over and I don't even know what he was thinking, but it affected him. It affected him in a very, very, in a positive way and in a very soft, opening way. And so by finding that peace in me and by recognizing that maybe I could be lazy with him as opposed to only when he wasn't around, that I was helping the relationship. And again, using the guide term, reducing the poison of friction, which is what happens. Friction is poison. It's not something that we enjoy. It's not good. It doesn't feel good. And so, and I also noticed that if I continued to do that, he would actually take on some chores that I wanted him to. I never even said anything. He would just do it. It was as if my movement toward him encouraged a movement, and this is his soul movement, his movement toward me. Um, so that was positive. And there have been other ways in that relationship it's negative. And I only bring that example up because it was just such a powerful thing, a powerful example um, of how this work can really help a relationship. Another possible outcome is that you remain in that relationship. For example, if it's a boss and you can't get rid of the boss, or if it's your spouse or your partner or your child, you remain in that relationship because you want to or you must, but you understand its limitations. By you doing the work and understanding the pieces of you that are like that person, even though they haven't changed, you can accept their limitations more. You've softened toward them. Again, that split is now narrowing, and you're reducing the poison of friction, and you're increasing that part of the triangle in where you have a shared experience. And so I really fully believe that when we do that, we really do have there's this magic of a subtle change in the other. But even if it isn't there, it's still important for your part of the relationship. And the last outcome is that you have that ability to end the relationship. And because you've done the work, the likelihood that you would choose a future partner who is capable of actually doing emotional work and growing spiritually and emotionally is significantly greater. And you reduce the possibility that you're going to choose a partner who is just going to repeat the old pattern for you, that you're going to continue to repeat this pattern. So even though that person may not participate as fully as you would like or at all in any of the pathwork you're doing, you are growing yourself, and that growing yourself is going to provide many, many different benefits for you. Yeah, are there any questions or comments anyone would like to make at this point? Yeah, and I think what comes to my mind is the phrase, am I invested in the outcome or not? And your attitude. And there's a part in here where I wanted to say, when we talked about the cutting somebody off in traffic, if you say, well, I know I've done that, so I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go. Just going to let it go. That never works because there's a forcing current entering, and we all know forcing currents don't work. So, if it doesn't matter whether you're trying to force somebody else to do something or whether you're trying to force yourself. And exactly as you said, whether you're expecting an outcome, you're trying to force an outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I just
Let's see. We are going to so I've developed an exercise. Don't need to read this right now. I'm going to keep it up on the screen. But we're going to take some time. We'll end the recording in a moment. But I'd like you to take some time um, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes, something like that. And we'll come back. But it's basically to just walk you through the steps of this process where you pick an event from your life that has something that has happened recently with someone. And just ask you some questions. You sort of go through this process about that event, and see where you end up. Do you come out in a place where you could feel some opening, something that you haven't worked on before, or can you not? Because that's also very informative. It's like me. I'm not lazy. I can't find that place in me. And uh, let's just see where it takes you. And then we will come back and Janice will put you in breakout rooms. I think she'll probably participate. Janice, would you rather do 2 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 2 for the breakout rooms? Or actually, because 3 and 2, I guess we have.
I'll see. Yeah, I'll try to do that.
Okay. And then you guys can talk about what you found and listen. And before we put you into the breakout rooms, I'll go through some breakout room rules, regulations, just kind of how we do that. So for the timing, and then so I'll do that. Then you can go into breakout rooms, and we'll come back for see what's going on in terms of if anybody has any comments or questions, want to share from the breakout rooms, and we'll move from there.
Okay.
So
starting now.
Yeah, starting now. Let's do 12 minutes and see how everybody is. I know there's a few different things on here, so take your time, maybe make some notes if you want to. And go ahead, and I will leave this up on the screen so that you can just, look at each piece in sequence. And if you want to stop your video and then come back when you're done, that's fine. That way we'll know when people are getting finished. And if most people are not finished in 12 minutes, we'll give you some extra time. All right, looks like everybody's ready. Okay, so just want to do a little blurb here. Thank you. First, thank you all for being here today. I hope you were able to get some good food out of that work, and had some good experiences in the sharing room. Just to let you know about Pathwork, California, there's a link for our mailing list, certainly a link to become a member or to just make a donation. All of that would be really appreciated. And also just wanted to let you know, as an apprentice helper, I am looking for workers, and would be, if you have friends or relatives or anyone who you think might be interested in the Pathwork, actually, both Janice and I are looking for workers, and we're as apprentices, we do this for a very, very reasonable cost. So we would love it if any of you could steer someone our way. And if not, that's fine too. And again, just thank you. Janice, did I miss anything?
No.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks everybody. It's been.
Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's been really great to see you, even if only on Zoom.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nice
Thank
meeting
you all.
everybody too.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. That was
Bye-bye.
good. That was good. I'm glad I was here.
Thanks. Thanks so much, guys. Take care and have a great rest of your day.